Alright everyone, I figured I'd start off today by echoing what I think 80-85% or so of you probably think, which is, holy hell, I wish Trump were president right now, because virtually all the problems we're having are self-inflicted and the result of Biden's meaningless meanderings and his weakness. A lot of it's due to optics. For instance, Trump is your president. The Taliban doesn't dare to attack. They think he's psychopathic or something like that. They're worried that he'll actually act if they attempt to advance, especially in like Kabul or Kandahar or something. The border crisis is self-inflicted. The inflation is self-inflicted. It's the result of the bizarre economic policies of Joe Biden. Business confidence is low. Again, same thing. All of the problems that we're seeing are simply the result of the transfer of administration, some of which are not even specifically policy related. Some of them are just related to people's sense, their belief that Joe Biden is weak and will not act. For instance, with the Taliban, we were going to withdraw from Afghanistan, but he punted the deal forward almost 6 weeks. By the way, did nothing to remove personnel during that period, despite giving himself that extra 6 weeks. And the Taliban said, well, Joe Biden isn't Donald Trump. He's not going to do anything. We'll just take over Kabul. Now they've surrounded the airport. Hey, bravo, by the way. We've seen from the Joe Biden administration, the asterisk administration, one part denial that there's a problem and one part blaming Orange Man and saying that somehow it's his fault. We see all the DNC shillbots all over the internet right now saying, well, Trump released Baradar from prison years ago. Trump scheduled the withdrawal. Trump is the one that's responsible for the fiasco in Afghanistan. That's funny because Joe Biden in his own address claims there is no fiasco. Everything's fine, says Antony Blinken, by the way. We basically achieved our goals in Afghanistan. Well, no, we didn't. Not by a long shot. But they blame Orange Man or they deny that there's a problem. Trump never did this. By the way, when Trump was president, if there was a problem, it was spoken of by the legacy media. Now they ignore it. They pretend it doesn't exist. The Afghanistan debacle is the only time so far in Biden's administration that they've even softballed him on actual issues. He keeps turning around because of this and not even answering questions. He wouldn't even answer questions related to COVID because he was afraid of Peter Doocy probably asking him about maybe the border crisis or the Kabul airport. Now, before I get into this further, keep in mind there will be a pinned comment down below if you're watching this video on YouTube with links to 4 other video hosting sites that I use. I make 2 exclusive videos a day on those platforms that do not get on YouTube because YouTube keeps slowly making more and more subjects and opinions verboten, and I think that's rather sad, but that's the direction big tech is moving in. Also, keep in mind, on YouTube, you rarely even get notified if there's if I do an upload or something like that. You'll get notified on these other sites. You'll know if I actually upload material. By the way, I will be debating / discussing things with Daedalus Logo later at 2 p.m. Actually local time, 8 a.m. Eastern. So make sure to set your watch and get ready to clank along. It's going to be a fun time. I think there will be some common ground in that conversation. Links available on Twitter, and also I did something, it's called a post on YouTube. They removed the actual commenting area. Now it's sort of like a blog 2.0 or something. I wish that Trump were president. I wish there were accountability. I wish there weren't hyperinflation. Keep in mind, economically, what we should be discussing even beyond Afghanistan is Joe Biden's economy. It's pretty bad. When the economy is not the number one issue, it's usually because there's a big problem. It's usually not because of a big success in some foreign politics. Afghanistan is an absolute unmitigated disaster, but so is the Joe Biden economy, and he's going to make it worse. They're still trying to ram through trillions in new spending, which will inflate the currency further, through his so-called infrastructure project, which really is about pet projects and pork, like the new Green Deal shit, Solyndra 2.0, Shovel-Ready 2.0. It will fail, by the way. It won't bring a return in general. So some of the proposals may bring a return long-term. Others will fall flat, and eventually it'll blow up in his face like it did with Obama. Oh, shovel-ready wasn't really shovel-ready. You remember that? A lot of people don't. That's why they don't have a problem with the infrastructure bill. Call it infrastructure, and people think it's about bridges and roads. Well, even then it would fail, but it's really not. It's about pet projects. It's pork, it's kickbacks for all the people in the Senate especially. You look at the inflation rate, 5.4% for July. Well, this was considered to be good. This was less bad than expected. The market soared on ahead. Oh, thank goodness. We've probably hit peak inflation, but the thing is, the damage is accumulative. Anytime you have inflation past actual growth, it's cumulative damage over time. We've had 4 months of considerable inflation, the first 3 of which were above expected. This has already depreciated the earnings and the savings of all middle-class Americans, and that damage isn't going to go away unless you go into negative inflation mode for some time to come. It would take a while. Even under Trump, we rarely had negative inflation. You did for a while. The top he ever hit was 3.9, and that was fairly early in the presidency. It was, again, lingering damage from the Obama era. That only happened a couple of times, and that was 4 years of large-scale economic growth. With Joe Biden, he's only been in office for 7 months. Not even quite 8 months. It's a shit show. Afghanistan is a huge issue. It's the first time the legacy media has questioned him. Most of the time when they ask him questions, it's what ice cream did you have last night? Well, I mean, what hard-hitting journalism. Can you imagine what Trump's approval rate would have been at if he had had the legacy media at his beck and call like Biden does? And Biden still reacts angrily, even if he's softballed. He's been asked before, and this is the other problem with Biden, is his attitude. He can be asked something totally mundane, and unless he wants to answer it and is interested at that time in the conversation, he snaps at people. Oh, come on, man. Hey, I bet I can do more push-ups than you. Then you have the buddy-buddying of big tech, which is working with the Democrats, with the Taliban at the moment. It's funny because as long as they don't threaten to behead you on Twitter, Jack Dorsey has no problem with them being there. I find it funny when Dorsey, midlife crisis man as he is, still pretends to be a neutral actor that's involved with free speech or something. Well, people have to be able to speak their mind. Yeah, but we're going to do everything that we can to prevent that from happening. You look at the border crisis. Again, you have both denial and deflection. Initially, they said, well, there's no border crisis, everything's fine. Then the legacy media finally decided to go to the detention center, realized that you had people like, it was like, 1,300% above capacity. They said, well, this is actually Trump's fault. Yeah, there's a border crisis. Several months later, they admitted, but it's by Trump's fault. He's the one that caused this crisis. But there was none under Trump. I hate how the Biden administration now at half a dozen times has been able to blame major problems on Trump, and the legacy media, because of their own 4 years of shitty propagandistic reporting, can't even do anything about it because then they're siding with Orange Man. So you have a lot of people in society that still back Joe Biden simply because he's never questioned. They painted themselves into a corner, or rather, journalismed themselves into a corner. At least when Trump was president, there was some hard-hitting journalism. Most of it was bullshit, but, there was an attempt to restrain the president's powers. They don't have that under Joe Biden. He can be as dictator-like as he wants, and they don't care. Right now, Biden's DOJ is gunning after the state of Missouri for attempting to not enforce federal gun laws if they go past the Constitution. They're getting bullied by Biden's DOJ. Can you imagine if something similar had happened under Trump? Oh my God, well, the 10th Amendment. It's funny, they're trying to invoke the Commerce Clause as having something to do with gun control. But clearly that's not a legally coherent argument. But they're doing it anyway. Joe Biden attempting to bully schools and bully state governors and so forth. It's an imperial presidency, one with economic illiteracy, already a major foreign policy blunder. By the way, removing one of the keys to the White House for Biden or Kamala should they be the ones running in the next election. I'm sure it's going to be interesting to see Lichtman's proposed matchup at that point. You're probably going to have a midterm disaster for the Democrats, which is good. It'll hamstring the administration, prevent most of the damage going forward. Then you have the Republicans cucking out, but I wish that Trump was president right now. I wish we had someone who understood money that was president right now. I wish we had someone who would not have ignored his own previous withdrawal date on May 1st, therefore ensuring the Taliban absorbed extra manpower. I wish that the Taliban weren't controlling most of Kabul right now. If Trump were president, it wouldn't be happening. The personnel would have already been gone. The vehicles would have been scuttled probably, and instead of airlifting them out, they probably just would have bombed them and destroyed them. The Taliban would be short a few Apache helicopters. It'd be short a few Bradley fighting vehicles right now. Certainly short on plenty of 50 cals and RPGs and all the other good toys. They fucking Predator drones and shit. I'm sure they'll sell those to China to reverse engineer, although I think they already got a hold of one at one point. Trump never did all of these things. He secured the border, despite massive pushback even from his own legislator. Finally, in the third year, got the billions that he needed, fast-tracked wall development, and then Biden, this was even funnier. They tried to blame the border crisis on Trump, then Biden a month later is like, well, Yeah, we're actually going to allocate the money left over, and we're going to finish the wall. Oh, that's funny. You ran on the wall as evil. Hell, Beto O'Rourke was the golden boy of the Democratic Party for his 15 minutes of shame. He said that he wanted to tear down the existing wall, which in some cases is nothing more than a vehicle barrier. By the way, about 350 miles of new wall if you count replacing shitty barriers that don't actually do anything. Trump accomplished things. What's Biden accomplished? Nothing. Other than inflation and a foreign policy disaster. I love it. And people say, well, it got us out of Afghanistan. Nobody denies getting us out of Afghanistan is a good thing. Thank goodness for Trump that he brokered the deal in the first place. If Trump, by the way, hadn't done that, Biden wouldn't even be raising the issue. We would have just have stayed in for 4 more years. That's a guarantee. Biden's not the one that got us out of Afghanistan. He's just the one that scuttled the withdrawal. He's just the one that shit it up. He's just the one that failed. By the way, even if he were to resign, it wouldn't help us because then Kamala would be president. Some people are like, well, Biden should be, removed from office for all the shit he's doing, but then we have Kamala. Yeah, Kamala's the insurance policy. She's so desperately unlikable and so terrible at governing and debating in public relations and all of these other things that it makes Biden, it's basically a way of him avoiding being removed because people are afraid to have her in as the alternative. Wouldn't it be funny if the first female president not only was an appointed rather than elected official, which, as VP rising to that position she would be, but was there specifically because the dude that chose her as running mate basically just thought, well, she's so shitty, all I have to do is have her aboard, it'll be like a Dick Cheney sort of thing. This, by the way, happened during the Bush administration. She's the evil one, so Biden gets to be the good guy who's just befuddled by comparison. Well, he is actually demented, unlike George W., who was pretending to be stupid. That's about all. Peace out.